All right. Well, hello and welcome back to Culture Clash Parenting. I'm Marissa,
I'm Astrid.
and today we're diving into a topic that really touches on a personal story that is shaping up in my house to be a topic of conversation on a regular basis. We were right in the middle of it. Um, and I brought it to Astrid, and we were like, this is a good topic for the podcast. So we're going to talk about group work versus individual work and what that looks like in school, what that looks like in the workplace, and how the different cultures have different ideas about collaboration, independence, and how success should be measured.
Yeah, it kind of affects both adults and kids. Because it culturally, I think there are group projects already done in schools, and which back when I went to school in Germany, we didn't have any group projects that I recall anyway. But now it's happening more and more because it's happening more and more in the workplace. When I was working in Germany, I didn't have a whole lot of group projects either. Like you worked as a team, but everybody had their own thing. So anyway, that's what we're diving into. So
Yeah.
grab a cup of coffee, settle in,
And
and
here's
let's get
episode
started.
11.
Episode 11.
Episode 11. So let's start with the story that is going on with my son. So he's 14. He's 13 and a half. He will be 14. And
Middle schooler.
he's in he says he's 14. He's in the equivalent of eighth grade, which here, as we talked about in an earlier episode, is the second to last year of middle school. So middle school here ends at ninth grade. So he's still in that middle school year where they're middle school time in the education system where they're learning about how to be independent and how to do independent work. Um, at the same time, as Astrid said, we're like more group projects are becoming um, part of the pedagogy here. And so there's more of a push to create group projects for kids to do. And so he's had more and more group projects in different subjects. And in one particular class this past month, his teacher gave them a group project. He assigned the groups, and they had to bring the project in on a USB key to present it. And there's lots of intricacies of the story where there was some confusion by the kids in the class of what the due date was for the project. But Zach is somebody who really like listens, is very autonomous. He always wants to do the right thing and meet the deadline. So he was pretty certain that the deadline for the assignment was on a particular day. And that day he came to school, and the person in the group who was supposed to bring the USB key had the flu and wasn't in school. And the teacher gave everyone who didn't have the assignment done a 2 out of 20. So not a
Wow.
0, but also like basically like you did nothing, you didn't do your work.
Oh yeah, that's like
Um,
leaving $1 tip. You didn't
yeah,
do you? Yeah, okay.
and wouldn't listen to why it wasn't done. And the kid who was absent got an absent, so he didn't get a grade at all. And Zach, again, who's somebody who like really believes in justice, like felt that it was really, really unfair. Um, but he's also just so tired at this point in like fighting with teachers for like standing up for not fighting, but standing up for what he believes in, right? Like asking questions, questioning. Um, and and as I was telling this, so another parent whose daughter is in the same class reached out to me because her daughter also was in a group that didn't bring the homework assignment that day, and her daughter didn't bring it because she didn't know that it was due that day. Because, like I said, there was some confusion among the kids of who of when it was due. And um, part of the issue is that they're not given time outside of class to work on it, or they're expected to work on it during study hall. But if the group isn't assigned, if the teacher is the one who assigns it, they don't always have the same study hall together. If they are in study hall together, sometimes they're working on other assignments that are due first, right? Like they haven't been given the instruction, and they are like 13, 14, like they should at this point be autonomous. And yet part of the reason that I see when I have conversations with Zach that he's not autonomous is he wasn't given the foundation on which to create the autonomy, right? He wasn't taught this is how you work in a group project, and this is how you work with people who aren't your friends, and also how you work with your friends, because right, like you still have to share and divide work. And so there's just the kids have sort of been left on their own to figure it out. And we're sort of dealing with that structure, or that frustration from Zach, who's highly sensitive and really just doesn't understand what he did wrong, like, and what other kids did wrong, because he felt like the communication wasn't clear. And then again, he felt like his grade was because a classmate was sick, which he couldn't couldn't plan ahead for.
Control.
Yeah, he couldn't control. So it's a really interesting situation because when I think back on my education in the US, I feel like group projects started really young, where we would work together on an assignment, or so that by the time we got to be in 7th, 8th, 9th grade, we knew what was expected of us, and we knew again, this is before the ages of cell phones, so it's not like we could text each other and be like, hey, like we had to actually, before we left school, have a plan for how we were going to meet up outside of school. And even in school, we had to communicate more to be like, I'll meet you at this time at this place so that we can make a plan for the project. That they just don't have, that's not, that they don't, that I see our children not getting right now in the school system here.
So you said you had to meet up outside of school, even at a younger age than middle school, in order to do a group project. So it
I'm
was
not
almost
sure.
like a homework thing, or no?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm trying to think, like 4th and 5th, 6th grade. So the end of primary school, I do remember that we would have group projects that were usually more creative in nature. And we would, in those times, I remember getting to pick my group. Like there's one project in particular that I remember in 5th and 6th grade. And and I remember meeting at my friend's house, and there was a plan, like we were going to meet on Saturday and do this, or maybe we met after school, but there was a plan, like we're going to be here and do the project because it's due. So yeah, I do remember doing things outside of school. And that's part of the system, like we've talked about before, like here through middle school in France, like they're not supposed to receive homework that they
Sure.
haven't reviewed in class. So so it's rare, like the kids don't have, going into middle school, that expectation or experience of working on something outside, that they haven't already discussed with the teacher and have a structure for, are supposed to understand what's required of them.
That's how Germany works. I mean, things get explained at school, they do problems at school, and then you repeat those for homework, basically, to really get the concepts.
Yeah.
And that, depending on the concept, like in math, that could take several weeks, right? Like, every time you have math. But you also don't have the same subject every single day. Like in the United States, it's kind of ridiculous that every single day you have the same schedule. Actually, now they have A days and B days in high school, but other than that, still you only have that afternoon to do the homework for the next day. And in Germany, we never have that. So you have 2, 3, sometimes 5 days if there's a weekend in between to do your homework for the next class. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit more autonomous, I think, that way because you can decide, oh, I have Tuesdays, I have some sort of sports practice, so I'm not going to get around to that homework till Thursday, but that's okay because I don't have the class till Friday, so I can, and even at a younger age, I can manage that better over there and here. I don't know about group projects, though. I know we did not have any. What you're saying, oh, we had to meet outside of school. I don't remember any of that. And it might have been one or two. And we definitely had one group project in 12th or 13th grade in PE, but the time was given during the class, and it was a dance that you were given a painting, some famous painting. We had a mirror, and the the group had to create a dance to express that painting. And it was the mirror that had, well, actually, the mirror that had the circles that does not narrow it down. I understand. There were a few circles that were black, and so those girls that did those circles, they dressed in black to present the project also during the class, and kind of balled up and rolled around like circles. I remember that part, but that was like 12th or 13th grade. I don't remember any other group projects in 13 years of schooling in Germany. Not one.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting because when we were talking about it with this other parent, and then we brought it to a PTA meeting, another parent was saying that her daughter was also struggling with how to coordinate group projects because they've changed the school system here so that if the sixth and seventh graders now are triaged into different levels in math and French. And so you may be in the same French class as somebody, but you don't have any other class with them because you're in a different homeroom. And it's part of this education reform that went into effect this year. And that's a whole nother episode as well. But what's so interesting is she was saying the same thing, like to that point. She's like, my daughter and the person that she's doing the project with aren't in shared classes other than French, where which the assignment was given in, and they have completely different sports after school schedules. And so they were really struggling to find a time. And she said they ended up just, again, like using WhatsApp and texting each other and having the conversation that way, because it was the only way for them to be able to communicate. So in some ways, like the technology and the tools are really useful. Zach doesn't have a cell phone, so that wasn't gonna, it was kind of a conversation. He's like, well, if I had a cell phone, then like the kid who was sick could have called me to tell me he was sick, and then I would have known. And I was like, yeah, okay, but he also might not have. And he has a parent who has an email address who could email me, and I'm on the PTA, so she knows who I am, right? Like there's all other ways, like we were saying earlier, like we grew up without cell phones. Like there are ways to figure out how to communicate with somebody else who doesn't live in your house without a cell phone. But yeah, I think one of the things that you and I were talking about and why it's an interesting topic is it's one of the struggles of parenting, because there always is that sort of balance first and foremost of like what's the teacher and the school's responsibility to teach our children how to do these things versus like me sharing my experience. But also, like we were saying, culturally, France and Germany, like Europe, is much more of a collective culture. It's much more of like an all for one culture, right? Like universal health care and social safety nets. And then like the school system is like, you're going to do all the work on your own without being in groups. Like, and when you are in groups, we're not going to tell you how to work in groups. Whereas in America, like everything is like, the culture is much more like what I describe here is like puppy dog, like we're a team and we all like you, like we're all gonna like go team. Um, but and so there's more of the like group projects in the education system. But then what you were saying that Francie was saying, like you get individual grades for your group project there, whereas like here they got a group grade for a project. Um, right. So it's these interesting kind of things within like how the culture on like a societal level doesn't necessarily play into what you're learning in school. Um,
I always thought that group project or collaborative play was being taught in preschool, and then you were off on your own. Like that's what is supposed to be happening. But I think they're also teaching academics earlier and earlier now in Europe, which in the United States, our daughter just turned 4 a couple of weeks ago, and she writes her name, and they've been practicing it in school for the past year, like definitely this year since the summer. So at age 3, they're practicing their names. The kids that are at age 5 starting what's called kindergarten here, but it's technically kind of like first grade or CP in France. They get looked down upon if they don't already know how to write to their name. And we didn't have to when we started first grade at age 6 in Germany. You're not expected to. That's why you go to school to learn that. That you're expected to know how to socially interact. You're expected to like know road signs, to where this is where you're allowed to walk or ride your bicycle. Those are the types of things that they teach you in preschool in Germany, right? So maybe it's in order to or with globalization happening, then we're all now expected to do really well in academics already before we get there. So now the social aspect of preschool is kind of lacking, and we have to make up for it in middle school with projects. I'm not sure.
Maybe. I mean, I think there's still this system here, as I know there is in Germany too, of this tracking, right? Like we've talked about in different episodes where like they sort of label kids at younger ages, like you're either going to go vocational or academic. And so I think you're right. I think here in France, there absolutely is this focus on, we need to figure out early on which track we're putting the kids on and how like and where they're going to fit into society. And part of the benefit of that is that there is such a greater respect for non-elite positions. There's such a greater respect for for the civil servant, and that's kind of what people aim for, right? Like they just want their kids to have a CD, like to have a permanent position, to have a fonctionnaire position, a civil servant job, because they can't get fired once they have it, right? And so there really is this much more of this respect of everybody has a role to fill within society. And so again, like going back to this like group project, it kind of shocked me from that big picture reflecting in that even though I think they think, because I've had conversations with the principal at the school, I've had conversations with some of the teachers, with some of the with our French friends over the years too. I think there's the belief or through their lens, they're teaching that by creating these group projects, by being like, you have to figure out what your piece is within this group, right? Which one of you is going to be like the note taker and which one of you is going to have the USB key. And um, but I also think that kids don't know what they don't know until they don't know it because they get a two grade, right? So there's this sort of like, and especially this generation, which is just so instant gratification, like they don't have the as much of the reflection of, taking time, the critical thinking of asking the questions or reflecting on it. And so it was really interesting. I do feel like the principal was like, yeah, like your job in middle school is to learn how to be a part of the collective and a part of the society. And he tells them this like from the beginning. I'm like, okay, but like, then you're giving them the exact same grade on an assignment and you're not telling them how to like, you know, how to work with other people. You're just expecting them to figure it out when they can't meet outside of class and when the expectation, right, is like you're gonna do it in the cadre in like the frame of like this one class time without any instruction. It's just a really interesting kind of um yeah, like without judgment, just awareness. It's just like, oh, like I'm not sure that like um that what's getting that that what they're preaching is being modeled. Um, so I tried to start that conversation, and then they're like, "You don't know what you're talking about because you're an American."
Well, here, two thoughts I had while you were talking. One, in the very beginning, I was thinking maybe they started doing more group projects now in Europe because all the kids have phones. You said something about instant gratification. And kids these days, they don't actually meet outside of school to play anymore at a very young age. So, because they're all on their phones playing Fortnite or whatever else they're playing, right? So maybe the group projects are not a bad thing.
Yeah.
To the fact that they all get here's my second thought, the fact that they all get the same grade in the end. And I know this from Francisca when she was in Germany. One project they had to do, or one they had to give a conversation in a language class, and her partner didn't feel comfortable speaking, so she basically ran the conversation, but they both got a bad grade because the partner didn't speak. So one, yeah, it's teaching kids to collaborate. Two, I wonder if they're not individual grades like in America, not to get political or anything, but may have something to do with the socialism or in Europe compared to the capitalism in the United States. Like everyone here is much more on their own selfish island and doing their thing and expecting a return on their investment. And in Europe, because of the collaborative that still prevails, even though it is definitely going away from that as well and becoming much more capitalistic, it's not expected necessarily by everyone that just because you put in an extra hour, you deserve to now make millions of dollars more. And then pay less tax on it. But that gets getting too political anyway. All right, stop it.
Yeah, I think I mean, I think this is why this podcast is so fun to record and have these conversations with you. I mean, these are conversations you and I had before we recorded the podcast, but um because there is no right or wrong, right? There's no one way that's better than the other. There just is what it is. And I think we can learn so much when we have that experience of seeing how things are done differently. Because again, like you don't know what you don't know. And so as a parent, seeing Zach's frustration coming home from school, for all the reasons that he was frustrated about that group project, seeing another parent when I brought it up getting, also saying it was really hard for her to know what to say to her daughter because like she was raised in that mentality of like you need to take this up with the teacher and get the teacher to give you that structure, right? There are things that are shifting and changing, and so both parents like need to learn how the new system works and like as the teachers are adapting, it's like that communication is really important. And I think that's what I see happening when I see big picture on both sides, right? It's like it's becoming so much more important to communicate. And it's so much easier to communicate with the phone, but like, are we even speaking the same language? Like the same, you and I are both speaking English right now, but like, are we making ourselves clear to one another, even though we're speaking the same language? And as somebody, who constantly every single day goes out into the world going, are you understanding what I say? Because is my French good enough for you to understand? Right? It's like, it's such more of a conscious thought in my head of, am I expressing myself in a clear way? And even I like don't always I'm lots of times don't get it right. But that's what's so fascinating because we can have these conversations and be like, oh yeah, like there's a third way. Like there's your way, there's my way, and then there's this other way. Like let's find that middle. Let's have the conversations so that we can support our kids to live in that third world, right? To live like the third culture kid world. Like the beauty of their experience is having both sides of the coin to be able to share and interact with other people through that lens.
Yeah, that's where I was going with that. The third culture kids are like, well, your ways from the old country are not what we learn here. but but then for you to go and talk with this other French mom, that's not how she was raised either. However, it was very different from where you were coming from. So I think in general, not just for us raising our children in a different culture, but in general, it's important to talk to people from different cultures, right? And compare notes. Even if you're not, even if in the end you both walk back to your own place and go, well, we were better than that. But at least you now know that something else exists. And I think especially for our kids, because, what do they say? Drunk people and babies always tell the truth or something along those lines. But swear to God, just water. But for the kids, the third culture kids, to really come back and they're at an advantage again because they can take the best out of both worlds to form their own opinions and make their own paths. But it's also then on them to kind of go back to their friends. I feel like maybe it's helping them understand much more quickly. Like this is how you work in a team. This is how it's done in the States. So let's take the good part of that and apply it here. And then we are the better team, or vice versa. Take it back to the States and go, well, no, we're just currently experiencing that. And it's good in this way, not so good in another way.
Yeah.
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 I did ask the one of our collective children that actually did do school in both countries, and I asked her, "Hey, we're going to do an episode on how project work differs in the different countries because I don't remember ever doing any projects, but Marisa brought it to me, and she sent me her answer this morning by audio." So let me play it here.
Projects were normally written and that you didn't have to present anything, you just did it and then you turned it in on paper. Group projects were generally done between a span of 1 class period to 4 class periods, 5 class periods, maybe like a week or 2 max. And it was generally just like a week or 2 days. And even though if it was usually a presentation, only one person from that group would be called up to present. You'd all turn it in, but it'd be kind of just a raffle draw of who'd actually have to stand up there and present it. There have been projects where it's like you have to make a video or something, and still then it's only one person who has to actually go and like turn in the assignment. It's just all your names are on it and you're all in the video as long as you can record, like everyone knows what part they did, then you get a grade. the group projects were less of a, like, there was communication, but in America here, group projects tended to involve a lot more planning and a lot more research. At Marienberg, you were just kind of expected to go into the project already knowing all about your topic. And because you knew all about your topic, it would only take you like 2 or 3 days to do it all, and you were expected to like, there wasn't a whole couple days worth of just researching with your group. And it wasn't, well, you tend not to have that many roles, I guess, in a group project in Marienberg. I never really had a group project where we all just like assigned ourselves to one topic or one part of the topic, and then would work on that, and then we'd splice it all together at the end. That's how most, I guess, people favor it to do it here in American group projects. But at Marienberg, it was definitely we're all doing the same thing, and then at the end we're just going to compare and then figure out which one's like the best method of doing it, and that's how it would function.
That's what she said, just the compare and contrasting the group projects. And it is interesting that the research part kind of grabbed me too, because a lot of schoolwork, like you had said before, in France, the kids do the homework based on what was already taught in school, and same in Germany. And there isn't that much research. I remember when I went to college and grad school here, a lot of it was research papers, right? Research papers. And
Not like
that's, do
I said it's not like that here at all.
No, everything is your own opinion.
Nursing school, like they were given, and Sean talks about this in teaching in a university level, like the master students are given the topic they're going to write their thesis on. The PhD students are given the topic they're going to spend 3 years researching. Like there isn't that sort of independence around what you want to research, what you're interested in.
You mean over there?
Here, yeah, here in France, yeah.
It's. I think it works the same in Germany in terms of master's level stuff. I don't know. I got my degrees here, so I don't know. But I do know that a lot of it was research papers and less argumentation, which is why I really enjoyed my law classes, because now you had to actually take a stand and argue your thing. Everything else was just, I'm going to research it, I'm going to regurgitate what I researched.
Yeah.
There's definitely a difference on that.
Well, this is a really great topic, and I think it speaks to, like we said, like what are some of the cultural differences and how they show up tangibly in daily life. So we want to hear from you. How does your culture handle group versus individual work? What's the society like in terms of group versus like the group collective, which is more individualism? And do you have a great or a terrible group project story that you want to share? We'd love to hear it. And like feature your story on a future episode. So send us a message on Instagram at cultureclashparenting, or email us at cultureclashparenting@gmail.com.
Let us know also how the group work in your school compared to your group work at work.
Ooh, good question.
That would be interesting to maybe pick this up again later and talk about work in different cultures too, not just school. Yes, we are raising the third culture kids, but 2 of them are graduating next year. So kind of want to prepare them for work. If you guys can help us out, that would be great.
Yeah. All right, everyone, see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening, and don't forget to like and share.
Bye.
Bye.